In this video, I'll show you how to disassemble an Ocean Master Generation 2 pump. We start by removing the bearing caps at both ends. I'm cheating a little here. Since the bearings aren't greased in this pump, in the real world, the bearing caps would be packed with grease. After removing the bearing caps, we loosen the small locking bolt on the threaded nut and give it a sharp tap to break it free. Next, we need to clean out the threads between the bolts in the bearing house before moving the bolts to the puller holes. This is a small but important detail that almost always pays off when it's time to pull the bearing house free. Then it's just a matter of tightening the bolts gradually and evenly, and as you can see, the bearing house starts to come off bit by bit. Unfortunately, the bolts aren't long enough to complete the job, so for the final pull, we use two slightly longer bolts to create that last push. Note that with this method, the bearing comes off together with the bearing house. That's because we haven't loosened the two bolts holding the adjusting flange. At the front end, we use a different method where the bearing stays on the shaft. The process is nearly identical, except this time we loosen the two bolts holding the adjusting flange, which means the bearing must be removed using a traditional puller. Sometimes, if the bearings are damaged, they can be stuck quite significantly due to heat or corrosion. In these cases, it's probably impossible to pull the bearings off by the adjusting flange, which makes this method a good alternative. The same goes if the bearing house is damaged and can't be used as a puller. Before removing the front bearing, we loosen the adjusting flange and the radial shaft seal to make space for a traditional pulling tool. When the bearing is off, it's time to remove the mechanical shaft seals. First, we loosen and remove the retainer flange. The retainer flanges have two puller thread holes that make them easy to loosen and remove. After that, we pry out the rotating part of the mechanical shaft seal using two screwdrivers. The same process is repeated at the non-drive end. We always recommend replacing bearings and mechanical shaft seals rather than reusing them. Next step is to remove the water pipe and stand the pump upright. This is exactly the moment where we're glad we reinstalled the shaft nut as it protects the shaft threads during the lift. We always use these vertical pipes with feet to support the pump in an upright position, but you can also make a decent stand using two pallets. Then it's just a matter of removing the support bolts, which can be more difficult than shown in this tutorial. You may have to use a water pump plier to hold the bolts in place in order to loosen the nuts. Lift off the pump housing, rotor, and shell with a crane, and place them aside for inspection and cleaning. Finally, we remove the flow plates and clean off any remaining gasket material. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions.